This is Friday Football Focus with myself, Chris Cave, and Tony Mepham is here in the studio. Tony, I've been away for a month. A lot's happened in Manx football in that time. Midweek fixtures are now in full flow, as we saw this week. First of all, there was an incident at one of the matches midweek. If you could elaborate on what happened there, scenes that we really don't want to be seeing in Manx football.
Yeah, I don't really want to go into too much detail, Chris, because there's an inquiry going on at the Isle of Man Football Association. We need the referee's report to come in first, but there was a problem at Pulrose against Donkin in combination 2. We'll wait till it all comes in, but it's not the sort of thing that we want to see in Manx football. We've had another one of those a couple of weeks ago as well, on the same pitch. So we need to sort of just find out what's happening here. And, hopefully we'll get that sorted out. We're not accusing anyone, but we just need to find out what's causing the problem and try and see if we can help somewhere.
But these are isolated incidents, they're very few and far between, just to clarify for people listening, aren't they?
Oh, very much so. And it's sort of like night games at the end of the year. People come from a day's work and, suddenly they're going into battle on the football field. And I mean that in a fair way. But unfortunately, sort of with the under-18s sometimes, there can be that clash from school and everything where it's not feisty, but it's competitive. Sport is competitive, it always has been. But there's a line that you can't cross, and that's the line that we've got to make sure doesn't get bridged. But no, there's been an awful lot on, Chris, while you've been away, and I know you've just been asking me now where we are with the fixtures. We're sort of on top of things. I've provisionally booked the bowl today for the Railway Cup final, which is the 26th of May. I haven't had it confirmed yet, so as soon as that's done, we'll let you know. We're not quite there. We've still got Peel and Old Boys battling away for that fourth spot, but we do have St George's, Peel and St George's, Corinthians and Russian in there. So we just need that other one. But even when you were away, Chris, we had midweek games, and I just thought to myself, right, this backlog will go quickly. And then we were losing full league programmes on a Tuesday, full league programmes on a Wednesday, losing fixtures on a Saturday and Sunday as well. We had problems, but we're nearly there. We're nearly over the line. There's a few clubs with problems. Laxey's first team still got a lot to play, and Cal Cup as well. And Moran have still got 5 league games to play. Anna Paul, Henry. We'll get there slowly but surely.
You do realise what is going to happen when you do book the bowl for the 26th of May. The forecast will come out and the heavens will open and it'll be rained off. So don't tempt fate.
Not at the bowl, it won't. It can chuck it down as much as it wants. I don't think we'll get frost or snow then. But it's just been a chase right the way since the start of the season. Since the first week of the September, we've had problems with the weather and everything else. And we've got there nearly. I say nearly, but there's a lot of tired players out there. There really is.
Well, the midweek games will take the toll when everybody's got jobs and things like families to look after. The Women's FA Cup final took place last weekend. Corinthians 3-2 winners over Peel. That caps off another fantastic season for the women's side. Yeah, they've done well, Corinthians, because they've had a very small squad. New manager, Jason Corkle, who's done a brilliant job. They lost the key player, Anna Dillon. She retired, and the young girls have just stepped up, and it's gone really well for them. Douglas Royal and Peel have threatened, and Peel 3-2, it says it all about it. Yes, Peel scored the second goal in the last minute, but Ellie Gorman with a couple of goals in that one. But they battled really well, and Peel were a couple of players short as well. So Corinthians were one, I think it was, short. So it was all right to watch. I have to say that it's like anything with women's football. Really good players come through, and then you can lose an absolute shed load to University, and it can absolutely devastate your starting lineup at the start of the season. But no, it's been pretty good. Laxey, a team to look out for next year. Colby have improved big time. Douglas High School Old Boys enjoy it, and even though they've had some big defeats, they've always turned up, which is really good to see. But hopefully maybe one or two clubs, there's whispers, might come into the women's setup, and if we can get some more involved, the Summer League is always a success. Then hopefully that will grow. But it needs a few more players to come in and just see what happens. Well, is the female side of football continuing to grow? I mean, we've seen the success of the England national side, the Lionesses. They've done fantastically well in competitions. Is that inspiring more young women to take up football?
I would say so. I think there's one or two clubs out there who are looking to start up their junior setups again. I know Corinthians are one. And I think the numbers, certainly at junior level, are good. The big problems are at senior level. Because if they've got families, they have to juggle that round, people to babysit or whatever on a Sunday or whenever the games are played. And also, you're working on smaller numbers. The first teams in men have got combination players that they can bring in, but women, I would say most teams probably work with a squad of 20. Well, you need 14 to play. So if you've got injuries, commitments, there's always, one or two pregnant and things like that. It can be very difficult, but let's just hope that we get some more of the 15-year-olds turning 16, stepping into senior women's football, and then that'll increase the numbers and hopefully increase the standard, because the actual Ireland team, which Brian Cowan's taken over, is very, very good indeed. A lot of good, skillful young players in there have come through the development centre, but again, it's that university that takes them away.
It does also for the men's side of the game as well. Let's talk about the Junior Cup. The final takes place in a couple of days' time at the Bowl. 3 o'clock kickoff. Old Boys versus St George's. Who do you make favourites for this one?
Tough one, because I think last week we knew it was going to be tight. Russian against St George's. It was hard because Russian get their Combination 1 League title tomorrow from the Canada Life sponsors. They've done well. They've been impressive, but Corinthians have chipped away. Also, Old Boys have probably been the team that threw it away. I think that game against Braddon where they lost has cost them absolutely big time. And I know that Liam Buckley's team are very strong there. There's big first team experience in there. Robbie Ward, you've got Callum and Craig Stewart in there. I hope he hasn't, but I heard a rumour that Dean France might have broke his leg midweek, but I hope that is totally wrong. And if he is injured, Dino, we hope that you'll bounce back very quick. But the Old Boys and St George's will be a really good final. It'll be sort of men against boys, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. St George's combination is very, very young, littered with very skillful young players, and they'll be looking to try and outwit the more sort of experienced players of Douglas High School Old Boys.
Well, the players you mentioned there do carry a wealth of experience, and that can only stand them in good stead when they go up against an inexperienced, you would call it, St George's side. How will they approach the game, both sides? I mean, will they do it differently because of the gulf in experience?
No, I don't think so. I don't think St George's care. And I mean that in a fair way. I don't think their players are fazed by it. They've been used to winning. They've been in the Cal Cup. They're still in the Cal Cup now. A few of them will be playing senior football, as in not Cal Cup. But no, I think Johnny Myers and team, and also Gaz Lloyd, they'll do a good job with all that there. But I just feel with Douglas High School Old Boys, there's maybe one or two injuries in there, key players, because I thought the game that they played recently in the quarter-final, they were fortunate enough, there's some good players in there, but you could see that one or two were carrying, and that could prove costly. But I know they were looking to try and get another player qualified this week, but they couldn't quite manage it. So I would say that St George's possibly start off as slight favourites against Douglas High School Old Boys.
Well, it'll be an intriguing encounter for sure. That game kicks off at 3 o'clock on Sunday at the Bowl. That's the Ascot Hotel Junior Cup. It's very much about cup football, the programme this evening. The Cal Cup, considering the massive backlog in fixtures, how has that managed to go ahead?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. I know, to be fair, a couple of clubs have chose not to enter it because their league programme was so busy. They just thought, we can't do it, and that's fine. We fully understand that because there are one or two clubs at the moment really struggling to fulfil their Cal Cup fixtures because they're tapping in to the Cal Cup for their first team. Laxey's 1, Ramsey 2. I know other clubs have got first team players in there, but they've got a big number. And when you look at Laxey, they started off the first game against Onken and won 2-0, but then lost 3-2 to Pulrose 7 days later, which was a surprise. Unfortunately, last night, Onken Pulrose was postponed by the Isle of Man FA. Laxey against St George's, the pitch was too wet, and that one was postponed, and that one will be rescheduled for the 10th of May. And it'll be interesting just to see where that one goes. I would think St George's will probably top the group, and it's the top two from each, and then we put them in a draw, and whoever gets who, that's the way it goes. But with that win by Pulrose against Laxey has put them right in it, and I would say possibly they've got a good chance. But when you look at Group B, a little bit more even. Ramsey started off with a good win, 5-2 against St John's. Castletown, who were the fancied team, were beaten by 2-0 by Corinthians. Then in the second set of fixtures, St John's beat Colby 4-1. Corinthians beat Ramsey 5-0. And then last night, Corinthians had a 6-0 victory against Colby, and Castletown put 4 past Ramsey to win 4-0. So I would say, looking at that one at the moment, Chris, that Corinthians and Castletown would be the favourites to top that group, and that would leave maybe Corinthians, Castletown, and then St George's, Laxey or Pulrose.
Do we see teams prioritising certain trophies, considering the fixture backlog, as we've already covered? It's hard work for you having to rearrange all these fixtures, but when they have to play a run of games, so many games in a short space of time, it is hard on the legs, and we've seen examples from a number of players that it is tiring on them physically. So do we see the teams prioritising tournaments, or do they take each game as it comes and just hope for the best?
I think there's definitely a bit of prioritising going on, I'm looking at Geordies. They're not breaking any rules, but St George's have cancelled their last 2 combination games on the Wednesday because they've got Cal Cup games on the Thursday. This is how I'm looking at it, and it allows the players to be fitter, and then also they've been chipping away at the Junior Cup as well. So I think they've looked at it, it's the same band of players. They can't play, or they can play 3 times, but they don't want them to play 3 times. They're not breaking any rules, so, that's the way it goes for them. But when you look at 1 or 2 other sort of clubs, I think, they've not necessarily been clever, but they've looked at things and thought, there's a mass of fixtures here. We just have to be sensible with the players. But there's a lot of good young lads up there. I'm looking at my club. We've got 3 first-team players, playing Cal Cup, and Danny McMahon, the manager's not too happy about it, but the players want to play, and you can't stop them. It's up to them, and as long as they stay fit and there's no injuries there, then 18, 19-year-olds should be able to run around 2 or 3 times a week anyway, I think.
Well, I think I agree with you. What I would say is it can only be good that the players want to play, even if the managers are thinking, I don't want to risk the injury. And that is when the problem occurs. If a player does play against a manager's will in a particular competition and they do get an injury, it does pose problems for the manager. So I suppose that is the whole dilemma they have with managing a squad of players. Well,
it is, and managers are not selfish, but they're looking out for themselves, and they're not worried about if there's another competition going on. And it's just one of those, if the players want to play, that's fine. I'm looking at Ramsey's Cal Cup team at the moment. They've got quite a few injuries, so they're struggling for players. And I think it's on Monday they've got a Cal Cup game, and then Tuesday they've got a Premiership game. It's just unfortunate that they're using the same group of players like Laxey are, as where the other teams might just have 2 or 3 players, so you could cover it well. And what you've got to be careful of is you don't get caught out where you maybe rest 1 or 2 of your key players, and then it costs you big time. And that's why sometimes we get bizarre scorelines in the midweek games, because people aren't available due to work, and also being clever on trying to rest players to keep them fit for the important games.
Let's talk about your club, Corinthians. They are in the final of the Hospital Cup, won in the semi-final against Russian, as we touched upon just before the news at 6 o'clock. They won 5-2 last week. It was a very close game for the majority of the match against Russian, and I was impressed with both sides, actually. It was a much tighter affair than the other semi-final on the neighbouring pitch between Douglas Athletic and St George's. We'll cover that one in a minute, but Corinthians, they'll be riding on the crest of a wave, will they, heading into the final? Because that was a tight game, and they're the games that you love to win when it is tit for tat for so long, but you eventually come out on top. Yeah,
definitely. And the players were up last night because we had a bit of work to do at Ballafletcher. And I think it was 12 players turned up for an hour before training, helped us out with things, and then they went to training. And I just wondered what, not state of mind, but how they would feel after that defeat on Tuesday against Peel. And they were fine. They accepted it. They're a great bunch. They really are a nice bunch of lads. and they've been beaten, and they move on. But I think if you looked at it at the start of the season, that Corinthians could win the FA Cup, possibly finish in the top 4 of the league, which they will do, hopefully, be in the final of the Hospital Cup and be in the semi-final of the Railway Cup. That's a good season. They're a small club, trying to now impose themselves, and, credit to them. And I think it's been tougher this year for a while for, the top clubs, because they are so close. Geordies, even, I put them in that bracket. They've kicked into a second gear, if you like, over the last couple of games, but even at the start of the season, it's been a lot closer than we expected, and that's what I think has made it more interesting.
And in Sean Doyle, you've got a real player on your
He's an
hands
icon.
there. He was fantastic again last Saturday. St George's, let's cover that other semi-final of the Hospital Cup against Douglas Athletic. They went a goal up, and then they got a couple more in quick succession. And I remarked at the time, I think for Douglas Athletic, for any team which isn't in the top 4 going up against St George's, that's already a psychological mountain to climb. And I think if the moment you go a goal down, that's when you have to have the real character to dig deep and get something from the game. And I think psychologically they'd lost that game the moment that first goal went in for St George's.
I think psychologically they lost the game on the Tuesday because they played each other, and I think Geordies won 9-0. So they knew when they came into the semi-final what they were going to face. And Geordies lost a couple of players injury. Furo Davies went off injured. Joey Morland didn't play because he injured. Kieran McNulty had a little bit of a hamstring pull, so they rested him. And, Geordies, I watched, because the way I sighted myself, I could see both games, and you were there with me. And, Geordies just know what to do. It's the semi-final of a cup. If you win 1-0, you're in. If you win 10-0, you're in. So it didn't really matter. They didn't have to take any risks. And I think, certainly against Corinthians in the final, it'll be a great game because both teams like to play football. That's what you want to see. You want to see people, playing football instead of this big rose head straight over the top and run onto it and hopefully you'll get it. We don't want to see, and I think that has been very evident this year, because even though we lost Corinthians on Tuesday against Peel, some of the football there was really good, and that's what we want to see, is some more of that.
And with a one-off game where the winner takes all the glory, Corinthians have a real chance to lift the trophy and to beat St George's. It won't be easy, but they'll know with the talent they have in that squad that they can very much turn up and are very capable of getting the result they need to win the Hospital Cup this year.
Definitely, when you look back, last year, St George's were beaten at home by Corinthians 4-3. Then St George's came to Ballafletcher and battered them and won 8-0. Then in the Charity Shield, Corinthians won. And then when you look at, the FA Cup semi-final, they beat them at Ballafletcher. So I don't think Corinthians are in awe of them. They respect them big time. You have to, for a team that's achieved what they've done. But it's been a really good season for them. The average age is 22. Josh Ridings is back now, so that's a big plus for them. And when you look at the other players that they've got there, at the back, Cameron Lee, Tom Smith, Chrissy Cannell's missed all season. Adam Killier's hit great form in goal. Daz Kane's back from injury. On the right, you've got either Phil Kelly, Callum Campbell, whatever. Midfield, they work hard, and then up front you've got Steve Whitley and Sean Doyle in great form. So it'll make for a great result. But Corinthians, first off, have got to concentrate on the game in hand tomorrow and play against St John's, who are Jekyll and Hyde. Tomorrow St John's could win 3 or 4-0, or they could get beat 3 or 4-0.
Well, if Corinthians fail to beat St John's, if it's a draw or they lose, then the title, should St George's win, will go to them for the 13th time in 15 years. Quite remarkable. Before we go, amongst all the fixtures, the Paul Henry Cup, where's that going to fit in? I mean, you've got some work on your hands there, haven't you, Tony?
I certainly have to get that one in. I've looked at it and I just threw the paper in the bin because I couldn't get anywhere near it. The big problem is Moran. They've got sort of 5 to play. Need to get them done. The way it's panning out at the moment, I think Castletown, Foxdale, Moran will be okay. And then I'm just a little bit concerned about Pulrose and Onken, if they can get in that for the Paul Henry. It's easy to get done and dusted because it's a semi-final and then we go into the final. But I really need to get the season completed for the 26th. I don't want to go into practice week and TT week. So we'll do everything we can to get things done and dusted. But I am a little bit concerned about that, Paul Henry, but hopefully, fingers crossed, the weather will stay good.
When the season finishes, do you go and sit in a darkened room and or a closet or somewhere and don't come out until the season starts? Because you do work round the clock getting these fixtures in, don't you?
Yeah, it's up in the morning early to make sure everything's right, and we've been sort of down a little bit in staff at the FA because Frank's been away on annual leave, and then Richard had left his post, but now Kevin Maitland's got in and got his feet under the table very, very quickly indeed, and working hard for the clubs out there. But yeah, you have to sit down, you have to review it while it's fresh in your head. I'm on that now. We tweak with a lot of things this year, so we need to find out if there's any success in it, because last week we played the 2 Hospital Cup semi-finals at Ballafletcher side by side. We did it last year. The weather was fantastic last year. Raised good money for charity. This year I had no option. I had to get league games on as well, and it was on a Saturday. We raised, I think it was £800, and that'll go to 2 charities or whatever, Douglas Royal Corinthians, and the FA will sit down and discuss that. But it's not doing it for me. I think it's a great idea, but it hasn't quite caught the imagination, and I just wonder whether we have to revert back. And it'd be nice to hear from, the football supporters out there and players, if it's working, because I expected, I'll be honest, 1,000 people there at each final, £3 in each. That's £3,000. 2 charities gain £1,500, and the T-Hatch profits as well. But it hasn't quite happened, so I don't know if we've got it wrong. I don't know.
Well, we'll try and garner some more support as we go through the season. It's approaching its end. But Tony Mepham, thank you very much for joining us. As always, it's great to be back speaking to you on a Friday evening.